gunfire aimed at elementary school
Columbine
children.
set the blueprint for a generation.
The deadliest campus shooting in U.S. history.
14 dead, 50 injured.
Respond to the magnitude of this tragedy.
Is at this point said to be 8.
Mental illness and disorders are on the rise in America today.
In schools, criminal activities, and everyday life, we are seeing how it affects not just individuals, but America as the general public.
Should mental illness and disorders be a concern to the American government?
And how can we protect our American people without taking away anyone's rights unjustly?
Oftentimes, people suffering with mental illness feel hopeless and don't see a solution to the situation they are in because it is uncomfortable opening up to others. Another reason for these feelings is people suffering from mental illness simply don't know where to go to get help. This is true in the case of Devin Patrick Kelly, responsible for the shooting at Sutherland Springs Church. Kelly had a history of animal and child abuse. Those who were close with him gave testimonies describing how he was disturbed and, quote, very sick in the head.
There's no doubt that there are times when people with mental health issues are more at risk for harming themselves or other people, and we know based on the science when some of those times are.
Recently, the state of Montana cut $40 million from their budget that has to do with mental health. And mental health is not only just about individuals who need that help, but also about a public safety factor.
In some cases, people understand they need help and reach out, but lose accountability to themselves to keep going to their psychiatrist. This is a factor in the case of Aurora Theater shooting conducted by James Holmes. Holmes reportedly had been seeing a psychiatrist for his troubles and journaled his homicidal and suicidal thoughts. Holmes quit seeing his psychiatrist, mailed his journal to them, and conducted this tragic event. His conditions got worse in prison, and he was admitted to the hospital after a suicide attempt. When asked about resources and solutions for mental health issues, Senator Jon Tester responded to us with the following quote: "We need more doctors, more counselors, and more therapists if we are truly going to make a difference. I am working to secure more resources to help folks across the state, and especially in rural areas, access the treatment and support they need. Current law requires therapists to alert law enforcement to imminent threats from their violence, and I believe this is warranted."
Some kind of shooting or something, then I don't feel safe because we don't have guns, we don't have anything to protect us. We're told to go sit in a corner and be quiet.
I think it's talked about a lot. In fact, sometimes I almost think it's talked about, more than it should be. What I don't see is sometimes realistic, practical solutions. Sometimes people, especially political people, use it for political gain. It's a buzzword.
The Santa Fe High School shooting was carried out by a disgruntled student. Demetrios Pagarchis kept notes on what he was going to do on his laptop and phone. This is another case in which the shooter needed help and didn't know how to get it, as he planned to take his own life after carrying out the incident.
So we're often called to things, we're called to everything, it seems like, anymore. So sometimes we have to decipher that, whether it's criminal activity or it's mental health activity.
So the Stop School Violence Act is about basically training school employees and others who work in the school community, including law enforcement, to identify potential threats to schools. This could include funding for crisis intervention teams to spot students who are basically raising red flags, who may pose a threat to other students or may pose a threat to themselves.
When discussing this issue with Senator Tester, he responded with the following quote: "That is why I voted for the Stop School Violence Act. This bill provides funding for training and equipment to reduce school violence or to provide mental health, anti-bullying, and violence prevent services." Discussing what limit of violent behavior can be exhibited before losing the right to bear an arm is an important part of the discussion when seeing how it will affect the Second Amendment. Seung Hui Cho had gone in for a mental health evaluation. Cho had a history of mental health issues and probably should not have been able to purchase a gun after his mental health evaluation. Students and teachers noted prior to the shooting how Cho was a quiet, angry, and depressed student who kept to himself. Their testimonies came just too late.
Gun violence restraining orders are basically civil orders. In other words, they're not criminal, which are based on risk. They basically create mechanisms for family members or law enforcement officers, depending upon how the law is written, to move quickly and get firearms out of the hands of people who are identified as, first of all, having firearms, and secondly of all, based on real factors showing risks of violence to self or others.
That one red flag law, and that's just off the top of my head, so ones I can think of, that's 4 constitutional rights. Now, these aren't privileges. These aren't suggestions. These are inalienable rights.
I think that all mental illness is not the same. All violent acts are not the same. However, I think that it should be incumbent upon a professional mental health person to look at someone who's exhibiting what we would call violent tendencies and determine if they have the ability and the responsibility to be able to purchase and have a firearm.
Dealing with mental illness in America goes hand in hand with protecting each American citizen's rights. Helping those with mental disorders and illnesses can become a matter of our nation's safety.
It is not something to take lightly and requires action. Many concerned children, parents, and teachers everywhere want to know how our presidential candidates protect our families and friends, but also our constitutional rights.